general resource that tells you, what are all the types of artificial intelligence, and then what are they good for, which is even more important. Because there's a blurry line between what's machine learning, what's artificial intelligence, and what's, just statistics.
You are harvesting this information from the animal because you want to recreate a simulation, or you want to create artificial intelligence to sort of mimic the natural intelligence, computer code, machine, ions, the electricity, and all of the. You put it together, you put information there so that somebody prompt this machine is able to give a feedback like the animal, like the real world. So the question is, how do you get those information that you are going to put into the machine so that the machine can then regurgitate it depending on the kind of prompt you are prompting it?
The underlying structure differently so that you form concepts of words which are grounded in reality, and that reality comes from multiple types of sensory information. That gets you a start. So for us, most of our experience is not language per se. It's about everything we feel, everything we hear, everything we see, everything we touch, everything we taste.
Hi, and thank you for checking out Obehi Podcast. We encourage people to own their story and share it with the world to expand their purpose. Before we start this episode, I have something to quickly ask you. Are you a purpose-driven entrepreneur? Do you want to cut across the noise and attract your ideal client by leveraging your story? Then pay attention. I have a signature program that can help you own your story. A 5-step training program to reshape your narrative for business and professional life, and in less than 19 days. The link is what you see on your screen. academy.aclasses.org/story. This is what we have understood. Storytelling is the most powerful instrument known to man. And this is what that means. You can either own your story and use it to advance your purpose in your business and professional life, or someone else will do. The choice is yours. Now let's get started with today's episode of the Obehi Podcast.
Yeah, my name is Gunnar Newquist, and I was a former pro skier who changed into neuroscience, and then from neuroscience, I started developing artificial intelligence algorithms based upon biology. And that got me into technology. So I started a company building smart robots, and now I've done things like self-driving trucks and laboratory automation and consulting for other tech companies. And I'm also currently developing a new companion robot with new artificial intelligence as well.
That is lovely, Gunnar. Now, tell me, but what actually moved you into artificial intelligence, the field of artificial intelligence, and of course, you're also in the field of neuroscience. I think both of them are actually sort of connected at a point, no? Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I wish they were more connected. When the field first arose, neuroscience and artificial intelligence had lots of discussion. And more recently, it seems like neuroscience has kind of fallen out of favor slightly in, when people found that large language models were doing pretty well. That really took a lot of the wind out of the sails of other approaches. And so what really got me into the field of artificial intelligence was this promise of artificial general intelligence, what artificial intelligence aspires to be. And so I don't believe that typical statistical approaches can attain that. And so it really drives me to look at how biology has solved these problems of intelligence and then apply those to machines.
All right. So what does it mean, general intelligence in terms of artificial intelligence? Could you spend more time on that? Of course, we have you as an expert here to help us clarify those points. And yeah, please go.
Yeah, so artificial general intelligence is essentially the ability for a machine to learn anything. And a lot of these current approaches had the promise of getting us there because it looked like you can take any data, run it through a deep learning algorithm, and then understand that data through these neural networks, and then it'll, magically give you answers that you are looking for. And what it's turning out is that scale is really what's necessary to make these approaches work. So, for example, large language models, they take all the data they can find on the internet and basically just understand the statistical relationships between the words. So what's the probability that you should say some word next given the context of the prompt or the context of other words in the area? And that actually works pretty well if you just want to reproduce something that kind of sounds like human language. But you're missing a lot of the underlying intelligence that makes that language flexible. So these machines don't understand the concepts being formed by the language, and they don't understand a lot of the logic that goes into human thought processes. And so they miss a lot of things. They hallucinate, meaning they make up information sometimes, and they just essentially don't do what the general intelligence idea is, and that is forming concepts, thinking logically, and reacting more like a human would.
Currently, as we speak, do we have artificial general intelligence, or is this something that we are moving towards? Of course, because with the rise of ChatGPT and all the large language model, of course, everything is on the table this day in conversation. So what can you say about that?
We don't have artificial general intelligence. Not at all. And from my perspective, it's not possible to make these like ChatGPT into a general intelligence model. It just doesn't have the functionality necessary to do those leaps of understanding that it takes to reason.
So when you say reason, what exactly do you mean by that? How is the computer going to do the reasoning?
Well, if you build the underlying structure differently so that you form concepts of words which are grounded in reality, and that reality comes from multiple types of sensory information, that gets you a start. So for us, most of our experience is not language per se. It's about everything we feel, everything we hear, everything we see, everything we touch, everything we taste. All of that gets put into our experience, right? And then we create stories around that. And that describes our experience. It helps us understand our experience. It gives us biases. It does all these things when we label our experiences with language. Now, the problem is we don't know exactly how these concepts are formed in the brain. But the important thing is that these concepts are formed by making associations, relationships among different words, relationships among different sensory experience and the word itself. And it's a multi-dimensional process that can't be discovered just by looking at word structures.
All right, now I'm thinking, is it possible that we can actually create a machine that is able to replicate the complexity of human experience so that, like I was saying, our thought, our feeling can actually be replicated in a machine or in a computer environment? Can you say something about that? Because, many experts like you have thought of the fact that looking at the brain of the human being, there is still a lot. It's like a universe of itself. There is a lot we still need to understand about that. So now, how do we build a machine that is going to replicate that that complex entity as a human being? Help me understand that.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I don't know if we can replicate all of what's going on in the brain in a computer, at least not at this point, because it's orders of magnitude more complex than people give it credit for. So a lot of the numbers people throw out are something like, oh, there's 100 billion neurons in the brain, and each one makes 1,000 connections to other cells. So that gives you an idea of how much information is being passed. The problem is that's only a small fraction of the amount of information that gets passed around the brain. So it's not just the connections that you see between one brain cell and another brain cell that passes information. There's also hormones, all this molecular environment, molecular networks inside the cell, things like dopamine that get sprinkled all over the place in your brain. All of these other chemical signaling events, there's millions upon millions of them that we're not even taking account of, that besides the structure of the connections of one brain cell to another.
Of course, all that make it a little bit more complex now compared to what we are thinking today, because many people, of course, are beginning from, I think towards the ending of last year with the rise of ChatGPT, believe that, in fact, we have got it to the limit that we can get to the test of technology, because now you can just prompt something into AI and it's able to replicate, it's able to give you a lot of information. So people are even scared, no? So
Yeah, I think there's some hope though. So if we stop looking at, like, let's just take all the data in the world and the computer will figure it out. If we stop taking that approach, we actually see that, despite the complexity of a human brain, there are a lot of things that we do that are rather simple. So we kind of respond and understand the world through heuristics. Like a heuristic would be a basic principle, a basic rule that we follow. Like every time that we see a button, we tend to push it. Like if you see a red button somewhere, even if it says do not push, likely people will go over and touch it at some point. So these are tendencies that humans have that we just can't help in some ways. And so I think there's ways of simplifying the structure of the brain into principles that kind of give you the idea of what the brain is doing, not completely faithfully, but you can get some of the intelligence of a human brain by doing simpler techniques.
all right. So you were saying something about, I think, biological intelligence, or maybe what you are doing have to do with have to be a kind of a connection between biology and artificial intelligence. So I didn't quite get that connection. Could you please re-explain that part?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways we can look at biology for inspiration for doing for making a computer more intelligent. So one of those ways is that, you could just try to replicate everything the brain does, model every neuron, every synapse, every molecule in there. But that's who knows what you're even going to get out of that? There's so much we don't even know yet. Instead, I think another thing you can do is look at it from perhaps a cognitive approach, where you say, like, what do people actually do? What processes do they follow to understand something new? And we can see that there's principles underlying all of that cognition, and we can then translate those principles into something a computer can understand, a computer code that can do basically the same thing, but in a simpler form.
All right. Now let's look into what you do within the field of artificial intelligence. Describe your work a bit for us to understand.
Yeah, so I've done two approaches. One is basically top down, the other is bottom up. So the top down approach would be looking at cognition and saying, how do people learn language from scratch? And then apply that to a language model. Instead of, so you develop the language model to say, okay, we need this type of process to happen to make a concept between, the color red and what red looks like in real life. So one of the processes would be to form an architecture around, the cognition rules that we have in our brains. The other approach would be to look at very low-level organisms, let's say single-celled organisms or even fruit flies, insects, how do they respond to their environment? How do they learn? And we can get a little more detail on what happens at a molecular level in those simpler organisms, and then see which of those principles we should apply to learning as well. So you can see that even a single-celled organism can make an association between, let's say, a light and electric shock. And then it'll change its behavior accordingly to like swim away or swim towards this light, where it wouldn't swim towards the light before. So it's a process of looking at the principles of biology from the ground up and from the top down at the same time.
All right, thank you for that. Now, this monomolecule that you are explaining, okay, of some animal. Okay, let's look at human being, because at least that is easier for people to relate with, which is how do we really learn? Because this is very important for us now. How do we learn? How do you explain that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There's a lot to that. I mean, if you look at the cognition level, storytelling is super important. What stories are we telling ourselves really manifest in reality, right? And what stories are we listening to create our biases and things we remember, how we anchor words to different experiences. The way we construct a storyline does that for us. So for us, language is a very big part of learning. But if you look at other organisms that don't have language, then you have to see like what's the basic principle of how they change behavior over time. And time is really a critical component, as like what happens in a time frame that gives you the ability to predict what'll happen the next time you see it. So if you find food in a location, what's going on around you that would indicate that food is about to arrive? So things like that really seem abstract from a human perspective, but we find that the same principle that tells an insect a cue of finding food is the same kind of principle that tells us a cue of what to say next in a sentence.
All right. You said some animal that might not have language. I want you to spend some time there. Give us an example, and so that I want to understand what this language even means. Help us clarify that.
Yeah, let's say one of the famous examples of learning is Pavlov's dog. I assume that a lot of people have heard of Pavlov, Pavlovian conditioning, classical conditioning. So what they did was they had a bell that got rung, and then food arrived every time the bell rang. So at first, when food came, the dog would salivate just to the food. But because of this pairing of bell then food, over time, eventually, the experimenter just rang the bell, and then the dog salivated, even despite the fact no food came. So it learned association between the bell being a predictor of food and the arrival of food. And so it could make a response to anticipate food even without seeing the food itself.
Yeah, it makes sense. But now I'm trying to see, we are imagining birds in the air, in the forest that are hunting, for example. And we are trying to see how do they communicate among themselves. There are some animals there are some single animal who maybe, for example, maybe one lion going to hunt is a gazelle. But there are some animals that are able to organize, like this white dog that we see often, that are able to organize among themselves. When they want to take down their prey, for example, one might hold the head so that the animal is not going to be able to attack. The other one are just tearing it apart until the animal is dead. Then all of them can then eat. So we can see that there is a lot of collaboration going on there. So what are they saying to each other so that they know what is going on? Because it is not just a mere instinct now. There is a communication going on. There is a collaboration going on. So how do we explain that language, that part of communication?
Yeah, the truth is I don't think we know enough about a lot of this. But one thing is clear: a lot of this communication is nonverbal. some of it's posturing, some of it's just seeing which direction the leader is looking and then following that. Then there could be some verbal cues occasionally, but a lot of these animals are hunting, so they wouldn't want to give away their location, right? So you don't necessarily want verbal communication in that case. And so one of the keys to understanding communication is not to just look at one thing, and that's the words spoken, but what are the other nonverbal cues that you're giving off that indicate your intent. And so I think a lot of it is about intent and about goals that are signaled through your subtle movements, your subtle, chemical signals, what other things that you do to tell others about what you want to do and what you want them to do.
Okay. What do you want them to do? Now, talk about what you want them to do. You are harvesting this information from the animal because you want to recreate a simulation, or you want to create artificial intelligence to sort of mimic the natural intelligence, no? Computer code, machine, ions, the electricity, and all of you put it together, you put information there so that somebody prompt this machine is able to give a feedback like the animal, like the real world. So the question is, how do you get those information that you're going to put into the machine so that the machine can then regurgitate it depending on the kind of prompt you are prompting it? What do you say about that?
Well, so not all of it is about prompting. So I would say a bigger part of it is about how do you make a human connection with this machine? So that's really my goal, is how do you create human connection, both among people and between humans and machines? So what is it that enables that? And it's not just about prompting. A big part of it is about what's going on internally inside that machine or inside you that you can express. So a lot of it is about expressivity regardless of prompting. And that can direct a conversation among two people, whether it be verbal or nonverbal, so that they can see your emotional state, they can see your intentions, and that changes the way that they respond to you without you doing anything about it consciously. And so if you can start with a model that can fulfill some of these needs of a human to feel that connection through what it does naturally before it even interacts with you, that's a big start.
In what way would that system exist? How would you put it into use? Like, for example, without me say something to this machine, maybe I'm feeling sad. How would the machine know that I'm sad? Yeah, something like that. Without me saying something, because, for example, we see the ChatGPT 4.0. The machine is able to note whether you are feeling good, you are feeling sad, because of what you say and how you say, the inflection of your tone. The machine is able to detect that. But without you saying something to the machine, how is the machine able to know your emotional state?
That's a challenge for sure. So I think it takes having a lot of different sensors. We have a lot of different sensors to understand how other people are feeling. Like we can sense their posture, you can see the tone of their voice, things like that. I don't think this is all solved. By the way, I don't necessarily have an answer for how to do this effectively, but I think the important thing is to try to get as much context as possible rather than individual single piece of information. So just saying you're sad doesn't mean you're sad, right? So I can say I'm sad, and then I smile too much, and people are like, wait a minute. This doesn't work. This doesn't, something's different. So what context can a robot gain to understand the emotional state of a human is one part of it. And then the other part of it, just being an expressive robot that tries to make you happy regardless of what your state is, it turns out that can influence your sadness as well. It can make you feel happier just by having somebody else around, a robot maybe, a human maybe, that can help you try to elevate your state without you asking for it.
Thank you for that. All right, Gunnar, you are an expert on neuroscience. Now you are also an expert in artificial intelligence. Is it your expertise in neuroscience that is helping you to better understand artificial intelligence, or the other way around? Help me understand how one is helping you in the other.
Yeah, I think one benefit of artificial intelligence is to have you look in the mirror and think about what your human existence is, and contrast that with what you see in the machine. So I feel like it helps. Artificial intelligence helps me clarify the human condition more than the other way around. I would love to try to look at artificial intelligence, see what I try to do is see what's missing, and then go back to biology or humanity and see like, okay, well, these things are missing. How do we actually do that as humans? Like, and then you find out most things we don't know enough about, and then you have to investigate. And that's what's really the innovation comes from, is where you see a gap of like, I have no idea how to program a robot to do this because we don't know how a human does it. Let's try to find out.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Now, like I was saying before, I was just sort of alluded to, there are some people who are sort of scared of artificial intelligence, no, because there is a lot of rumors that they show around it. For this reason, they don't even want to interact with it. So I sort of have a question. Is artificial intelligence a tool, or is it more than a tool? Because you, as an insider, you understand what you are creating. Are you creating a tool, or is it more than a tool?
So far, artificial intelligence is a tool. I am trying to make it more than a tool. I want artificial intelligence to be, a companion, really, something that isn't just a device we use for like a screwdriver or a hammer. I would like it to see it. How do we have artificial intelligence help us elevate the human connection? How do we make humans connect again? And artificial intelligence can serve as a nucleation site to get humans to talk to each other again. And I understand that's, seems naive and it's hard to actually do that because there's so many nefarious use cases, right? But I think if we move away from just data mining for the sake of building artificial intelligence models that can then sell us things, into what can artificial intelligence tell us about existence that can make us better as a species? If we can do that, I think we'd have the goal of artificial intelligence to do things that are useful and help us come back together. But I'm not so naive to think that that's what's the only outcome that's going to happen if I try to do this. There's definitely going to be things that are not so great if we make a companion that's so compelling that somebody could take that information and then use it against us to manipulate us, right? Which is something that a lot of people that have these tools of artificial intelligence can do today, is manipulate us based on our biases.
All right. There is a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
When you say artificial intelligence as a companion instead of a tool, I want you to explain the existential question that people are going to have about that. Are you talking of a machine that is independent of human control, and therefore maybe we can sit in the United Nations one day, they will ask the machine, but what do you think about it? Okay, but we are making this decision. Are you happy with it? What do you think? Like maybe you will have a wife, or a wife can have a husband and say, okay, I am thinking of doing this. Or maybe, okay, he or she is abusing me. I want to sue you to court because you have a right, I have a right. So is that the kind of companion or companionship you are talking about? Please let me clarify that.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's completely independent of us that can provide an outside perspective. And we are a long ways from that. So you'd have to do a lot of work to get it to this. And also, if you wanted to turn it against us, you'd have to do a lot of specific work to get it to turn against us. So this isn't necessarily a discussion for today, but sometime in the near future, we have to figure out like what are the benefits and the dangers of doing this. But think about our AI companions that we see on the movies, like R2D2, Kit from Knight Rider, Herbie the Love Bug. I think there's ways of programming these machines to be able to be friends to us and help us through our tough times. One of the hugest problems that we have in the world today is that people are disconnected from each other. If you're just staring at your phone all day and not interacting with other humans, what's going to get you back into that pool of talking to humans again? Maybe it takes an AI character on the phone saying, hey, you need to talk to somebody else. Here's some ways of doing that.
But at that point, is this still not a tool in that I have very little knowledge about artificial intelligence? That's why I'm asking you a question that maybe children can ask you, no? Of course, I'm asking all this also because there are a lot of amateurs that are listening to us. So supposing I'm asking this simple question that they can understand it. So at that point, is it still not a tool? Or because if we say it's independent, no? What if I switch off the lights? Is this still going to function? What if there is an earthquake and all of us run away? Will the artificial intelligence still run away with us or something? So how much independence is it really independent?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I am an advocate of always having an off switch. Right. But think about with your friends, what your best friend, aren't they both helpful to you and just a companion? Like they do both, right? They have functions that you could classify as a tool, but you don't want to classify your best friend as a tool. They're there for your support, and they're independent, but they can also make you happy, and it's a combination of being useful and being just somebody that's there, It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a mix, I think.
Thank you for that. Now, tell me about anyway, first, before we come into what is the future of artificial intelligence in relation to what we are doing, what about the fear of the people? Because I think that also is legitimate that people get a response to. Have you heard some people who who are skeptical about artificial intelligence for a lot of reasons? They have more than a million reasons, taking their work and all of that. When you hear those things, what comes to your mind?
Some of these fears are legitimate and they need to be addressed immediately. For example, if your company is trying to develop an artificial intelligence just to take your job to do it cheaper, I don't know if that's the best use case of artificial intelligence. You should be trying to use artificial intelligence now with the current technology to help you do your job, not replace you. So another fear is like, what data are they collecting that they're going to use against you later? Because all this data is getting put into these models, and some of that will know intimate details about your life. And a government could use that to, change your credit score or assign you into a risky category for one thing or another. These things are dangers, and I think what we should be doing though is trying to figure out how to change the story away from it's all about collecting data and then using that to sell things into what can you do so that humans are in charge of their data, and then they can use artificial intelligence to help leverage that data? Or what can you do with an artificial intelligence character that's independent of your data? can we just have a friend that doesn't need to know everything about you, but can just talk to you? And then it doesn't send all that data to some big tech company to try to sell you stuff. So I think the biggest concerns that are justified are, yes, people are going to lose a lot of jobs due to artificial intelligence, and we need to figure out what to do about that. Yes, AI is going to try to manipulate us. It already has in ways that we are not aware of, which will bring in, political division and just negativity in the world. And those two are, and then what are they doing also to create misinformation? So these three things I think are the biggest fears that need to be addressed, and I don't really have the answers for those.
All right. Maybe if we talk to a human being, we will find the answer, because human beings are actually the architect of the misinformation. They are the one that are creating the fake news and all of it. But we are responsible for the war, the crisis, the death, the massacre, the killing, the homicide, the genocide. All of it are a heritage of the human being. We are not certainly going to blame that on the machine.
That's true.
All right. Now, I have an existential question. Let's say we create an AI that is really independent, not the one that has on switch or off switch. It's independent. Independent means independent. It can decide to take an action because he have a morality, have a way of understanding what is good or bad. Like we sometimes can decide. For this reason, we can go to war with another country. Only that the AI this time, they organize a war. They identify enemy, but the enemy this time is human being. Because the human being have destroyed this world and they want to save this world. What did they decide that one? They decide to create an army to destroy humanity.
Well, I think that we would need to try to head that off before it gets to that point, actually, because that's a situation where something purposely got given the ability to make those type of decisions. And right now, we shouldn't be putting the lives of humans at risk in that way. So one way to avoid that is to try to instill the robots with same moral principles that we have, but hopefully upgraded even. So we have these morals of do not kill other humans, but most of the time you only apply that to people that you feel are part of your tribe, right? So how do we extend that so that the robot could try to do something where, death isn't the only option? Maybe they'll be able to find better ways that we can do something. I don't know. I'm hoping we can figure that out before it gets to that point.
I'm laughing because the thing is, it got to a point that sometimes it really becomes complicated, no? Because, like you said, maybe the AI would decide, okay, they're not going to eliminate human being, but they can make us incapable of thinking so that we can become like junkies. Because we are saying independent. Independent means free, independent, completely independent to do what they like to do. Because maybe what we are leveraging us that make us advance like this as human beings is because we're able to leverage energy of the sun, the water, all of that. But if AI are free to do their own thing, they don't need us. Absolutely, they don't need us. If they can think, they can organize, they can tap energy from the sun, for example, and decide to just cancel a country in an instant.
Yeah.
I'm talking of I'm questioning the independence of AI.
Well, hopefully we can instill the need for biodiversity. We as humans, if we understand biodiversity, we wouldn't try to completely eliminate every species that we don't like. We would manage it somehow, I guess. Maybe, hopefully they don't decide to manage us in a way that limits us too much. What if they start throwing us all in jail because we're bad people? And then there's some that are basically a human zoo, and then there's a few that are allowed to roam free. I mean, this is a possibility, but I think that's so far away that there's a lot of other problems that we should try to be solving first. And first and foremost, if we can reestablish human connection, that should stave off a lot of these other problems that are coming from artificial intelligence taking advantage of us.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Of course, we're just thinking aloud here, so we're just bringing out the different possibilities. By the way, it's good that we do this, no? We need to think about everything, no? All
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
With that, by the way, we take that away. Let's look at some of the advantages because now I've often say, of course, looking at AI as tool because that is how I look at it because I'm not an expert. So I just think from the way that it come to me. So I look at it as tool. We have always been using tools since the dawn of time. And we continue to use tools, only that now we have more advanced tools to use. I think a lot of people need to learn how to use AI because you don't have any option. You just don't have any option. Whether you are a business, you are whatever is it that you are doing that have to do with other human beings, you just don't have any option. But how do we say that idea to the people?
Yeah, that's a difficult one too. You're asking a lot of questions that nobody's figured out well. So I would just have to throw something out here. One thing to think about is what do you do as a person, let's say 50 to 60 years old, they're nearing retirement, and suddenly their job is lost due to AI. Are you going to retrain that person to use artificial intelligence and then do a completely different job that they've never done before in their life? And the answer is absolutely not. They're not going to. So what happens if you lose too many jobs? There's going to be many, many people that have found themselves lost and they're not able to catch up with just being able to learn AI. Like that's just not a possibility. So I think we need to figure out a way to have some kind of social safety net that can stave off again this upcoming problem that people will lose their jobs, and then what can we redo? I don't think retraining in AI is the answer for everybody. It's only an answer for a subset of people. So we just have to figure out something to do about that or try to slow this process down. And I don't think we can slow it down at this point.
Yeah, me too. I think you have got it to the race where you cannot slow it down. But if we cannot slow it down, now what can we do? Can we steer it in a direction that it can favor us? In fact, that is really where I want to go, which is building problem solution into the AI. But I want us to see AI as tool. Of course, that way at least we are still living within the area of green zone, if you want to call it like that. Because the moment we go beyond tool, making it conscious, I don't even know if it can be conscious, because I'm still looking at it like wire, like code. And I believe that myself, I'm not just a code. I am too much of a code.
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at it like that as tool. What are the possibility? I really see there is a lot of possibility here. But anyway, I want to hear it from your mom. What are the possibility we have with AI solving most of the problems that we have today in the world? And for humanity, let's put it like that.
Well, there's tons of ways that AI could help us solve our problems if we'll let it. And the key is if we'll listen to it and actually implement the suggestions that it makes. For example, right now with climate change, it could give us any number of answers to how to solve climate change. But the problem is most of those options aren't going to be very well received by people who have entrenched themselves in a certain way of doing things, right? Are you going to want to suddenly change the way that you're driving back and forth to work if it costs you money? It doesn't. It makes it harder for you in the short term, even if in the long term it's better. So what can we do to make AI both give us answers and then help us implement these answers in a way that people will accept them? And I think the problem is the accepting of the answers, not necessarily the fact that they can help. And that's where the companionship and the human connection, I believe, comes in. Because just like a storyteller, the storyteller that has the best, human connection, the best social network, is the one that sparks change.
How could we, within people that are within the field of storytelling, how can they benefit with the use of AI, for example, in telling the human story?
Well, you get access to all of the information in the world suddenly, and it can be recreated in different ways, in sometimes creative, reorganized into new ways. So it can really spark creativity by looking at other ways of thinking that are out there on the internet, and then the way that the AI restructures it to something new that maybe hasn't been seen before. Wow, that's a huge tool to be able to step out of your box that you've been in your whole life and think about new ideas, new ways of storytelling, new stories that you've never heard before.
Now, we have a LinkedIn audio room. Actually, we have two, one every week. So during one of our LinkedIn audio room on business storytelling, of course, we do encourage people to use storytelling because at least is the best tool, I think, not one of the best, it's the best tool that is known to man, the ability to tell story or storytelling as it is. In that, yesterday, I was actually researching online that since the beginning of human being on Earth, there have been about 170 billion people. And I say, each of these 170 billion people, each of us have been a unicorn. Each of us have been separate. We have been different.
Yeah.
We have been unique. We are not,
Yeah.
nature haven't made any mistake, which means that each of us have a story. If we can tell our story, then we are actually unicorn. So that today we can say that it is very easy to create a lot of content. In fact, a lot of people are actually creating what I call the Me Too type of content, where they just basically regurgitate what every other person is doing. But the thing that actually separates us is the story, because there is no other person in this world who have had exactly my experience. Where I was born, how I grew up, what I even like, how I dislike, how I hate, and I am a complex entity, and each of us is a complex entity. So if I can talk my story, when you put it side by side with another person, even though the person is born the same day with me, is the same age with me, eat the same food with me, our story is still going to be different. So I really like what you're saying there, that the AI is going to be very useful because it's going to help us to tap into the information of the world. But those information, how did they get into the AI?
Yeah, right now it steals it. It takes it all from the internet and puts it in. But there's another paradigm that could form, and that's where people voluntarily give out information and they get something back in exchange for it. So if you own your own data, then you can give this to the AI and expect to receive monetary compensation based upon what value that gives to the world. So this is something that I guess some of the blockchain companies kind of aspired to, but didn't really execute well on. But what if you could flip everything around, in that if you own your own data and then you can give it to an AI, which could then spread it to the world and rearrange it and use it in useful ways such that you get something in return from it, I think that's a very beneficial tool.
That's true. That's true. But do we really own our data the moment we put it on the internet? Do we own it anymore?
No. I'm saying that's the opposite paradigm from what we're doing right now. You put it on the internet, some company owns it now.
That's so interesting. Now, talking about that, I'm looking at what can be the fragility that is existing within the world of AI. Because it is a question of number, which is 1 plus 2, 3 minus 5, 6, 7 hash, because those are code. And if you lock it with code, it can also be unlocked with another code. It's just that you need somebody who's know how to do it, they will do it. If that is the case, how safe are we when everything is a question of code?
Yeah, the digital world is fleeting, right? There's been some talk of this generation leaving very few actual artifacts because everything's online. And so, 1,000 years from now, what are they going to understand? They're going to find an iPhone or an Android phone, and then all the content is gone because the processor's been smashed, right? So what can you do? I don't know, actually. uh, maybe you can maybe you have some ideas.
I'm just thinking, of course, here in Obehi Podcast, we just think aloud. We are supposed to do that. We are human beings. We just reflect, no? That is a project, that is a part of our project that we call Life and Legacy, that we're actually looking at a way to be able to preserve our experiences. And we really think it is important because even though today is 16th of July, 2024, we are actually looking, sort of trying to hype AI. But according to what I believe, in about 50 years from now, or 100 years from, let it be abundant. In about 500 years from now, those who will be living, when they reflect to the AI we are talking about today, they will laugh at us that is what we had. Because they're going to have a technology so advanced that what we have today is going to be a kind of a waste of time. Like, for example, Can you imagine what kind of iPhone Julius Caesar was having? He didn't have any. What kind of car was he riding? This was only 200, this was only less than 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. You know what I think is going to happen? I think the lines between what is real and what is manufactured by us is going to blur substantially, to the point that we won't be able to understand what was created in a physical world versus a digital world. So maybe there'll be implants in your head that make hallucinations for you, right? And we won't know the difference between a hallucination and a real physical thing out there. That's going to be a very interesting paradigm shift as things become more and more blurry as we increase our technology.
Is that really necessary? That we sort of, because when we do that, we are trying to blend the human being with the machine. Is it not enough that maybe we can have a machine that can be, like you say, a companion to the human being so that we can use it to be able to solve a lot of problems? Because, for example, look at what Elon Musk is continuously saying. Let's be multi-planetary. In that there is a lot that we haven't even touched. This universe is huge. We can't limit ourselves to just this 4 square of this earth. We need to think of how do we go beyond this place and explore. We don't need to plant things in our head. Of course, for the way I'm seeing it, we need to develop sophisticated machine that can help us go far.
Maybe we'll come up with 2 species of humans now. There'll be the ones that are introspective, the ones that are using technology to build digital worlds around themselves, and it'll all be in their heads. And then there'll be the other ones that explore out in the stars and completely separate themselves from the humans on Earth. And then there'll be drift, and those people will come back together someday, and they won't recognize each other.
Why do you think that might be a necessity?
I don't know if it's a necessity. I think the necessity is that things change over time, and if things isolate themselves from one another, they grow apart.
Yeah, that's true. So when you look at the future, the future as a scientist, what do you really see when you meet among your friends? Maybe, for example, you're having a coffee cappuccino. What do you see in the future? What do you dream of looking at what you do within the world of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I try to focus on the positive right now, and that's the future I see is that there's all these devices around us, and if all of them have some kind of artificial intelligence, which they will in the future, what can we do to make those devices better for us rather than addictions to us? And I think one of the ways is that it has its own voice, and it can either tell you like, hey, you've had enough of this, let's go do something else, or it can draw you in and then you get addicted to it and you do nothing else but have this imaginary companion. I would hope that the future that I would like to create is one where all of our devices are our companions, but they make sure that we maintain human connection.
Now, when you look deep inside your mind, What do you feel about the future? Do you feel fearful? Do you feel optimistic?
I'm a little bit pessimistic at the moment because there's a couple of very strong challenges coming imminently, and we're not doing anything about them. And I think the biggest one is climate change because of the ability for that to disrupt so many humans' lives. If you have 1 billion people that will be uprooted because of the fact that it becomes too hot or too dry in their local region, what is that going to do to the global scene? It's going to create utter chaos. And really what we need to be doing is planning ahead and figuring out how do we make sure that those billion people that are projected to be displaced by climate change, that they don't actually get displaced and that they can maintain their lifestyle. I think that's what we need to be focusing on.
That is so good. Is that what also other people that are working in the same field like you, is that what they also feel? Or maybe somebody is thinking that, of course, it's not like the military are new to the technology that we're talking about today. In fact, someone said that they have already experimented on it far ahead, like they are like 100 years ahead of us. What we are using in the consumer industry or in the consumer economy, the military have experimented on it many, many years ago. But the question is, of course, many people will use AI in different ways. It's not only going to be used just by chatting article or chat GTP or things like that. Many people, including the bad people, are going to use it. Does that scare you that we'll get to that point that it might be completely different from what we are talking about today?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's mostly the thing that's scary is about the manipulation that AI can do to you. So it can feed you your worst fear, and it knows it's your worst fear because of the way you engage with it. And another problem that is with the large language models in particular is the amount of resources they use just to create a sentence for you. So I'm not really okay with throwing away a bottle of water every time that I do a few prompts. I'm not really okay with burning the equivalent of Hong Kong's energy needs, daily on, random chat prompts. Like, we need more efficient technology that will not manipulate us, but be helpful to us. And so, yeah, all these bad actors can use this technology now, but the fact that all this technology has this huge infrastructure cost and this huge climate cost is just as concerning, whether that's being used for good or bad. And so I would like to develop more efficient ways of using the information so that we don't have to burn so much energy and so much water on the way to intelligence.
All right, I have a curiosity there. We are asking the artificial intelligence, for example, to help us find a problem to climate change. And we also have agreed that the artificial intelligence is going to tap into what information that it has been fed, which means it's not really having extra information that we do not have access to. Just that no one of us have access to all this information at the same time. So if all of us put together do not know the solution, the AI also do not know the solution. Is it like that, or the AI is able to come with original solution that doesn't exist within our understanding?
I'd say today it's not going to go much beyond what the human understanding would be. But if you develop a different strategy, one that forms concepts, one that generalizes those concepts to new problems, and one that then has access to all of the information in the world, now you have a system that's completely different. And that would be able to step outside the human condition and understand things that we would never see. And I believe that is coming. It's just not coming from large language models.
Why do you think that is the case? Why is it not coming from the large language model?
Because they don't form concepts of what they have developed or what they have taken in as data. They do not generalize beyond their data set very far, and they don't have logical reasoning. They don't solve logical problems at all. So if it's not in the data set in some way, they're not going to go very far beyond the answers that are in the data set.
Many people, when they talk about artificial intelligence, they usually think of maybe ChatGPT and that, because these are arguments that a lot of people have no idea how it functions, or they hear it from afar, and they don't have a clear idea of what is actually happening there. So for somebody who wants to have a better understanding, a better grasp, because like I was saying, people need to understand what is happening. Because if you don't know, you cannot explore what you don't have access to. You cannot leverage the knowledge that you don't have. So where do you think people should start in understanding actually what is meant by artificial intelligence?
Yes, I need to look this up better myself for finding the resources. There are a few educational resources out there, but I don't think there's a great general resource that tells you, what are all the types of artificial intelligence, and then what are they good for, which is even more important. Because there's a blurry line between what's machine learning, what's artificial intelligence, and what's just statistics. So usually people use the term artificial intelligence, kind of focuses on large language models and a few like deep learning, which are neural networks, kind of focuses on that. And they use machine learning as anything a machine can do to take in data and then spit out an answer with whatever computational methods it has at its disposal. And then statistics are, somebody more manually does some calculations and shows you the information that way. So I need to actually look up and find what a good resource would be. So I don't have the best answer for that right now.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, now the type of artificial intelligence work that you do, what is the best use case for it? So which companies should sort of reach out to you? Tell me which are the clients that benefit more from what you do?
Well, right now it's just entertainment purposes. So we would like to get to the point of being both entertaining and being more functional and helpful in the real world. But right now the strategies are fairly well established for engaging people in an entertaining way. So if you have an application that has some useful function and you need this entertaining engagement, then that would be a good partnership.
So at the end of the day, you sort of merge your intelligence into what is already existing, or do you need to develop a new application that sort of interact with that application of maybe a new company, for example? So how does that work?
So we've tried a little of both over the years in different ways. So the application that I'm currently developing would be standalone. So it would work directly on a robot or a digital character. But that would be integrated into either a robot that we build ourselves or somebody else's product, where we just put the software right onto that product. It doesn't have to work that way, though. It could be a layer in another person's ecosystem.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Of course, we have spent a good amount of time here talking about artificial intelligence. Of course, it's something that is very huge. It's not something that we can finish in one day. But of course, I appreciate your response to all the questions. Some of my questions, I understand they are very simple, because for simple people, they want to understand this thing. So we have a lot of questions to ask.
Obviously.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So how can people connect with you? Those who want to maybe do business, those who want to learn more, why don't they want to reach out to you to learn more from what you are doing? So how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn, and I am Dr. Gunnar Newquist, and I live in the Reno Tahoe area. So the last part of LinkedIn will have Gunnar Newquist actually on it.
Thank you so much, Gunnar. Now, what would be your final thought here? A kind of last message that you would like to leave the people with?
I want people to understand that technology doesn't just have to be a tool you use, but I think technology can also be a means of a nucleation site to bring humans together again. And that's what I want to create, is this ability to have human connection, not just with machines, not just among people, but this mixed reality now that we have humans and machines and all of them work together. That's the future I'd like to create.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That is a beautiful future. Everybody need to have a taste of that.